Today, I have the great pleasure of having Professor Johanna Amaya providing some insights about her research. Johanna Amaya Professor Amaya is a pretty good friend of mine. We have known each other for many years. She will show some maps. I'm not gonna say too much.
Not that many.
And Professor Amaya is a professor at Penn State in the Department of Supply Chain and Information Systems. And we have a similar pathway to being faculty here in the US, come from almost the same area of this country, went to the same university for undergrad. We both did something in the middle, but then we also had got the PhD from the same institution for the same advisor.
The same ending.
The same ending. And so today she's gonna be discussing some results about parking research. And again, we're all yours for the next 1 hour and a half or so. Thank you for coming.
So thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Miguel, for inviting me. It's really nice to come to UC Davis and to share a little bit about my background and what I have done in terms of research. So one of the first things that I wanted to mention is a little bit about myself. So I'm originally from Colombia, same country as Miguel, but I'm from a different city, not that far, like hour and a half far from each other, and went to the same school. So my undergrad and the first portion of my grad school is in industrial engineering. I have some studies in logistics. And then after that, I went to UF for industrial and systems engineering, and then my PhD in transportation engineering. So most of my studies have been in the ending side or the delivery side of supply chain. And as such, I try to see how things move, the flows, and I apply to two couple of areas. So most of my perspective is let's study logistics systems that have multiple stakeholders working, and then see how we can analyze it from the perspective of those either being impacted or those that use it. And in that, I concentrate on two types of systems. One is what happens after disasters, and the other one is what is moved in urban areas in terms of freight. So in the case or in the area of disaster response logistics, normally I think about how to best improve response, how to make people be prepared, communities be prepared for the next round, or how decision makers and actually the official response can actually be prepared for the next round. But beyond that point is how we can ensure that we are really distributing what is needed, or the critical supplies, while minimizing the suffering of those that be impacted. In the case of urban freight, normally we look at the operation, the different agents that work in urban areas or participate or engage in urban areas for the movement of freight, and then how they perceive the implementation or the impacts on different policies. Lately, I have been working on last mile deliveries and how these also, when we decide to shop online, how these also affect the movement of freight in urban areas. Some of the projects and the methods that I use, normally I like going to the ground. So I go to disaster impacted sites when it's possible, and then collect data in the form of interviews or surveys, talk to the people, those impacted or those responding, and then come back to the office to figure what can we do to improve what we saw. And then come up with methodologies or models to actually provide some what could be done better the next round. And the type of model that I regularly use is discrete choice models or structural equations models, looking at latent variables, what us as individuals actually perceive differently, and separate us compared to other individuals that have different ideas or ideals that they incorporate in the decision making. That's how we try to come up with ways to standardize those latent variables and then incorporate in the decisions that people make. And then a hybrid of those. And in the case of projects, for the area of disaster response logistics, the long time decision problem that we have seen, what people should donate after disasters. physical donations or money, we are against the physical donations. At least I am. I'm pretty sure too. But that's a problem with different perceptions and how people view physical donations compared to money. But that's a different story. I started a couple of, maybe a year ago, to look into incorporate deprivation cost functions, which is the one that we use for monetizing or putting economic value suffering. But then for using a food bank network to actually relieve or activate their operation as a response in a place that have been impacted by disaster using Hurricane Harvey. And that's an ongoing project. Before the entire group joined, we were talking about the retail delivery fee. That is something that is several states are thinking about implementing when people order online, how they can actually use it as a revenue stream to improve or maintain infrastructure because they don't have enough money to continue maintaining and repairing the road network. And then the one that we're talking about today, which is about space management, that is more about parking for commercial vehicles in urban areas, thinking about how can we design or come up with a policy package that considers, yes, we want to make sure that we are offering a space for loading and unloading operations, but at the same time, can we do it in a way that we incorporate the perception of delivery drivers? There are some needs that they have. We have some restriction in how many loading and unloading bays we can offer, but we can find a middle ground. That's what we want to do here. So in the case of the perspective of multiple stakeholders in urban areas, this is what I have been doing, looking at what citizens say. What do they have? They usually have like the pedestrian areas. They want to go to shops that are well stocked, but then they don't want to interact much with the cargo. They don't want to see trucks blocking the view of the window that they are sitting next to making a delivery. They don't want to be parking or sitting behind a truck that is making a delivery or seeing something blocking their travel lane when they are driving. Carriers, we need to find a place to park and do our loading operations. Where can we do it if everybody is thinking that the space or the use of space is more important than us making the deliveries? So they also have some needs, and they have also some perception of how things could be done if they are allowed to do their regular operations. And finally, receivers, can they adapt the receiving hours or operations? Can they actually look into as well? There is a difference between us ordering and receiving at our place versus establishments receiving at their locations. So can we adjust to change our delivery practices or receiving practices, and then see if we can find a middle agreement on this? And actually, when I implemented these type of questions to identify policies that could be beneficial across the board, we were able to identify that parking is the number one policy. The provision of parking is the number one provision or policy that all three agents identify as the most beneficial in urban areas. So that's a critical aspect. It's challenging. Not many people want to see parking for commercial vehicles, but we can find a middle point to offer in continuing operations. So with that, if you have any questions, otherwise we can start talking about space management. Okay. Okay. So before I start, I want to acknowledge a work that I did with Professor Sarah Reed from University of Kansas. In this one, we joined forces to try to come up with a way that we can design a policy package for the better management of limited infrastructure in urban areas, AKA loading zones for commercial vehicles. So we concentrated in deliveries to establishments based on an extension of the work that I did before. But one of the aspects that we have identified in urban areas from the perspective of freight is that we cannot always find, or delivery drivers can always find a place to park to do loading and unloading operations, particularly unload. So there are different cities. I'm located in Pennsylvania. I look at the Northeast. So different cities in the Northeast have implemented multiple options. They have come up with allowing reservations, not allowing reservations, first come, first serve, 60-minute session, 30-minute session. So they have not necessarily come up with a good outcome out of different implementations. And they have seen that overall those results have led that reservations are not good for commercial vehicles. And that what is done for passenger vehicles does not necessarily work for commercial. And with that, it has been very painful to figure out what to do with for commercial vehicles making deliveries. So we wanted to know, okay, can we identify something that would allow better manage what is available now? Because we understand that there is a need for resources in order to invest to expand the number of loading zones that are available for these type of operations. So we know that drivers face several challenges when they are going. There is a time spent searching for a parking spot, and then normally they go to on-street parking. That's the best location. It has been identified by them that the closer they are to the delivery place, the better and the shorter amount of time that they need for this operation. So normally what happens in urban areas, they have 60-minute sessions. So, and then they increment in hour by hour. For example, in the case of New York City, when you have these spaces, you pay at a meter, and then it give you 60 minutes in the commercial loading space. You can pay for 2 or up to 3 hours, and it goes up in the amount of money that you pay. But it has been found that many of those spaces, whenever the parking space, the parking time or the parking session is too long, it's being used by service vehicles, not by those making deliveries. So there is a conflict between those. And also, in many cases, for example, this vehicle is a service vehicle. This vehicle is making deliveries and is actually doing it in the travel lane because it doesn't have a space to wherever the delivery is going. So most of the elements that affect whether a driver decides to use a parking spot or not comes from the time that they spend searching, the time that it would take them from the place they park to the destination or the delivery and delivery place, and also the cost that they have to pay for those. So definitely they see a need for this, to find these spaces, and the more time they spend circling the block to go and find another space, they decide at some point to either reschedule or illegally park and then do this quickly. That's the idea. The other problem is that most of the spaces available are in the first come, first serve. If you get it, you get there, it's empty, use it. If not, then you have to find something else. So we would think that if we better manage what we have right now, because we're not thinking that you need to add more, because the solution is simple, but it requires a lot of resources. So can we decide something that could actually consider the behavior of drivers? That's what we wanted to know. Forget about the notation. I don't want you to pay attention to that. So our system, what we're trying to figure is, okay, let's say, and we are concentrated, but keep in mind that we're concentrated on one loading zone. We haven't expanded to an area. So think about a loading zone that is located on street. And we want to come up with a system that is going to be helping the driver to access it. So we show the availability, and then they can access it within a particular time to allow for that. One of the main drawbacks of allowing reservations for loading zones is that it actually gives, it returns non-equitable results, because the big companies that are able to reserve in advance, they can secure many spots. And then the ones that might need less number of deliveries in a particular area may not find a spot available because it's reserved. So it doesn't necessarily lead to equitable results. So what we're doing is we are trying to model the utilization of a loading zone, and we are trying to identify if by going away from the fixed 60-minute parking session, we can better use it to accommodate for the times that the drivers told us before that they usually spend making deliveries or using a parking spot. So we model this as a Markov decision process. So this is how it goes. So we have the arrival time. We have the drivers arriving to the zone or to the area, they request a load, they see if if it is available, they request the use of it, and they say for how much they need it, starting at what time. Then what happens is the system decides if it is feasible, that is, it is available, I can accommodate this time session that they need, and then either it is accepted or not. If it is accepted, then they are provided with the access for this particular time session that they requested. If they requested 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, they are provided with that. If it is infeasible, then they are not provided with it. So we found that, before I move on this, we found that in the first come, first serve scenario that is currently happening, about 30% of the request for parking is actually accepted. So they have a 30% chance, between 25 and 30% chance of actually finding a spot available for them in the situation that they have now. So once they decide, like, yes, you can have it or not, then they are going to the next state, as long as they get another request and they can say yes or no, depending if it is occupied or not. And the goal in our model is to maximize the utilization of the loading zone. So we want to maximize the minutes. The more sessions we can accommodate throughout the day, the better, because we will be maximizing the utilization. Now, as everything in life, money comes in. What happens if you are using it, but you are not returning the same amount of money that I'm getting right now with my 60-minute session? So we try to compare those. We wanted to maximize utilization and see how that impacts the revenue that compared to the base case, which is the 60-minute session that we're seeing now. So what type of information do we have? The arrival of vehicles at this area, so the requests that will be coming, the parking duration, that is how much time this delivery driver would need to make the delivery. And then we tested multiple things. One, the flexible parking sessions, which is not just the 60 minutes, but offering multiple sessions. And then if we allow them to apply to get an advanced reservation or not, and the advanced reservations, we know that they cannot do it way too much in advance. But we found that search time takes, so impacts the possibility for them to select a loading zone. So we play with two values of advanced time. So I can secure it to get there in 5 minutes. So we think, like, if you are 5 minutes away or up to 10 minutes away from this zone, I can actually allow you to make the reservation, and then you will be able to get there. And then we play with also with price. So if you are offering flexible sessions or different parking sessions, we will make it with different prices. So a block price for one that increases as you increase the time or that you're trying to use the bus. And we use it for the entire time between 7 a.m. and 6 a.m., which is the time that we consider the loading zone can be regulated by the contact center. Any questions now? Okay, so.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you consider, for example, if a vehicle that make a reservation takes longer than they decide to schedule the?
So that's why we wanted to make sure it's in a short period of time. We don't want them to take advantage if they are too far from their place, because if the place is congested, they would not make it. So we wanted to make sure that it is within 5 or within 10 minutes.
But I mean, like, for example, this person make a reservation because it's close to the area. So once the vehicle is there, for example, he is scheduled for 15 minutes, but it takes 30 minutes, like more than.
Well, that would not be allowed. We are assuming that in the modeling, we are assuming that if they ask for 15, they would stay for 15. If they need 18, they will request for the 31. So, and if they leave earlier, we consider that in the usage, in the utilization, but we are not assuming that they are cheating the system, that they want 15, pay for 15, and then stay longer. Because the loading bay is gonna show in the app as available. So if somebody gets there and is occupied, it's gonna be a conflict. So we are assuming people play as the rules go. Okay, so before in 2022, I contacted an LTL, a less than truckload carrier, and interviewed the drivers. And they gave us all kinds of information about the time that they spend parking to make deliveries. And we found that there are three aspects that influence their decision. When they see a parking spot available, the cost of the parking, the time that they have spent searching for it, and also the access time to reach the destination from that parking location are the three elements that impact the selection, the choice to actually use it or not. And they also gave us how much time they spend parked at those locations. And it happens that only 6% of those drivers in the sample told us that they spend more than 30 minutes parked. So most of them are actually spending less than the 60 minutes that the current session offer is actually in place. So we are seeing right there that there is a mismatch, and we can actually do it in a different way that could be potentially influencing the utilization. We also needed information regarding the arrival rate of the trucks going to the particular area. In this case, we used the rates for Soho in New York City, and we did two different things. One is because they say like at particular times in the day, the rate changes, so there is a peak, right? So we did the varying arrival rate, but we also did the same as if the entire day were the same type of arrival. Let's say like during from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., everything was 9.7 or 31.9 or 6. So to compare for the low, medium, and high demand, plus the varying arrival rate, to make sure that we actually accommodate for reality in this. So we tested both no reservations, but with the flexible sessions. That means that we are not doing anything else. We're just offering different sessions, and then the customer, the driver gets there. If it is available, they decide to use it or not. Similar to what is now, but just with flexible sessions. Then we also use two alternatives for advanced reservations, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, which what we're saying is, since we're thinking in using it via an app, basically the location of the loading zone and the location of the vehicle is actually available. So we can actually see if it is true that they can be there within 5 or within 10 minutes. So we use 3 parking sessions, 15, 30, and 60 minutes, and then we combine different values of the 15, 30, and 60-minute sessions. Using a space that in New York, there are neighborhoods that use $6 per hour and others that use $7 per hour for these parking events. And then we say like, okay, if you want a 15, you have this value for 50 or 5 for 30 or 6 for 1 hour. And we also make combinations to go all the way up to 7. And then offering in these values once they are actually requesting a particular time session. And then compare the results. So things that when we developed this heuristic, we wanted to make it as realistic as possible, and then making sure that what is the best way to compare, what would be our benchmark, is knowing at the beginning of the day every potential request that we can get. And even with that, we were able to get around 87% of the mean utilization that they would get if all this information were available at the beginning of the day. So in advance, we will have it. But right now, the way that we have it is just 5 or 10 minutes in advance. We don't have as much information, as much time in advance to get this request. And it behaved pretty good. So different tests that we did, and we did it in 2 types of settings. One is, remember I mentioned that between 25 and 30% chance a driver has to go to a location and then being able to find a parking loading zone. So we tested with 2. One is if they request the loading zone and it's accepted, they take it because they know there are low chances that they get there and find it. But we also, because we did that delivery, the discrete choice model with the driver's information, we also identify a setting in which they have a choice. Despite being accepted, they can take it, they can illegally park, they can reschedule, or they can continue searching, which were the options that they have initially in the current situation that they have, with no possibility to schedule a reservation. Okay, so initially, what we wanted to know is what is the utilization when we have all these sessions, okay? So the current in the varying arrival days, so throughout the day, well, we see that if there are no reservations allowed, we can see that both the 60-minute session and the flexible sessions both achieve the same utilization in average. So we are not doing anything weird. It's the same utilization, but now we are accommodating more of the different types of needs because we are aligning more with the distribution of parking sessions the drivers told us. Instead of just thinking about the 60-minute, we are accommodating more. And we see that there is a reduction. If you are only offering the 15 minutes, I have not seen the 15-minute session pilot tested, but I have seen the 30 minutes and there is a reduction in utilization if you just go for that one. So that means that if you are too restrictive, you are actually using the loading zone less. If you offer more variety, you will be able to accommodate more or the different types of sessions needed. And this one shows you actually how much the minutes awarded are actually utilized. In the 60 minutes, it's just 27% compared to the flexible is more about 70%. So what we see is that when we have the different arrival rates at 60-minute sessions, we see that we can accomplish without any reservation, we can accomplish the same utilization. Now, if we allow reservations of 5 minutes or 10 minutes in advance, it decreases for all, but for the flexible scheme actually achieves higher utilization compared to the just single session of 60 minutes. So we can achieve higher utilization when the possibility to reserve is actually allowed. And this comes from the fact that when you reserve 60 minutes, but you just need 15, you are paying and you are not using the time. So most of the benefit that comes from this 60-minute session is that you are getting revenue. And we're talking about revenue, not long ago. So yes, it is nice. It is simple to implement, but you are not actually helping those that need to make the deliveries. You are just making sure you're getting your money, but the actual utilization, the actual loading zone is not being utilized as it should. So at least in this flexible scheme, we are getting at least 72% of loading zone utilization. That is minutes paid and used compared to 27% in the 60-minute session that is time paid and used. So it's a big difference on just offering one type compared to flexible sessions. And when you offer the reservation options, we can also see that most of the holding time for the case of, at least for the 8 = 5 and 10, happens when the loading zone is in use. So I'm holding it for somebody else, but it's because I know who is coming next. It's not that I'm waiting the entire time to offer a new session, which for the case of 60 minutes, if you see here, nothing is used while you're waiting for the next person to come. So offering reservations only for 60 minutes is definitely not good, which is what has been found before. Like 60-minute sessions definitely are not useful because you are holding, you're not necessarily using it, but holding it, it doesn't maximize your revenue. In this, with no reservation and thinking about, okay, now I figure that we'll be able to use it, and most of the benefits of the single session is because of the money. So now, how far would it be if I do the flexible and then also change the charge? So now I'm thinking, let's charge this amount for the 15 minutes, this other amount for 30, and this other amount for the 60 minutes. And then we are able to see that in the case of the 60, at all times, we also get more requests in the flexible, except when it is at the same, without reservation. But then what we see is that the time paid and utilized is higher, but we will be around 75–80% compared to the original 60-minute sessions. So we are a little bit lower, but we think that we can actually adjust it with some. Now, when we do advanced reservation, we also get similar revenues. If we are, for example, comparing to the $6 per hour session, we can go up to 7 and we will see very similar revenues. But it might be that certain neighborhoods would not allow an increase in that if you go in that direction. On the other hand, when we allow reservation, we can actually charge a little bit as a holding fee. And that holding fee for the 5 or 10 minutes while you get there actually closes the gap. And the gap gets better when you allow up to 10-minute reservation. So there are ways to play with it that you can actually get better at using it, plus closing the gap in terms of the amount of money that you would get for allowing this reservation and a holding fee. Now, when we comparing the driver choices, then it's a different thing. Things are not as clear because now I have impacts on searching time, access time, and also the cost of the particular loading zone. So even though I request as a driver to use it and they tell me it is approved, then I may say, well, I don't want to use it. Now I feel like that's too far. So we actually estimated a multinomial loading model that I think most of you are acquainted with. So with that, we identify what are the preferences of the drivers. And we found that parking will be the most important one for them, the most preferred one, followed by illegal parking. That means that if we play too hard with the 3 variables that influence, that means that they may go from parking towards illegal parking. So we needed to make sure that we don't do that hard, because they will say like, well, now if I adjust with the holding fee, I can close the gap. But no, I might actually go up or down because these variables are now affecting my decisions. So we came with this. We've also found that definitely utilization improves. Revenue now is impacted by both the election and the choices, but we see that there are more events accepting parking compared to illegal parking. And when we look at the holding cost, the holding fee, we can see the closing the gap, but it's not in a straight line, because if you go up or down, it actually affects the probability of selecting each option. And still, we will be able to get it when the advanced reservation time goes up to 10 minutes. We didn't go after 10. There will be a threshold, I would think no more than 15 minutes. They don't want to search more than that amount of time when they are looking for a parking spot. But it actually get more gains when you start looking at that. And we found that there is a reduction between 2 to 5% of illegal parking compared to, we could consider that everybody is accepting the offers for park. So some of the findings that we found, definitely we were able to prove that flexible parking stations are more effective than single sections. We also were able to add that if you allow for reservations, they are not as bad if you shifted within a particular time frame. And then if you want to close the gap when you are seeing a reduction in the revenue, then you can actually add a holding fee. So at the end of the day, what we're proposing is be more flexible, figure out what are the needs of the drivers in your area. Of course, this is something that we estimated for the Northeast. Things are different in Philadelphia compared to Pittsburgh, compared to DC or New York. And even though we did it for the case of New York City, it definitely requires implementation and, of course, stakeholder engagement, which is very important, because there are some that may say, I don't want that near me. I don't care if they have to pay or not. I will report or whatever it is if they are double parking. Things that many can actually have a say in this. And also, when they have a choice, what we need to do is actually, because they know it's already a low chance for them to find a parking spot, nudge them to actually accept it and use it, and learn to use the platform. There are different implementations of technology that have been done in other countries, that the issue is not necessarily that they don't like it, it's that they don't know how to use it, and there is not much of education going around it, and they just decide, oh, I don't know how to do that, I'd rather double park, do my thing, and then keep going. So it's important to do that as well. And of course, At the end, they need to adjust the parking policy. It's a pain for all those involved. It is important to recognize that budget is limited, so we are not thinking that they should go and then build more. It's more about better use or efficient use what is already available. And then with that, I think I will think. So, do you have any questions?
Questions.
So we have plenty of time for questions.
In terms of like safety, do you think about how to be the app? Because if the driver is like driving. and
Oh,
have
well,
to
we're
find
Yeah,
the-
so we are thinking that they will use it at the end of the delivery that they are doing right
Oh,
now,
okay.
and like ahead of the one that is next.
But if the next one is far and like the driver have to be 5 minutes close to the area to where they're.
I guess that would be more in terms of the implement. Normally, when they do deliveries, they cover a zone, right? And by experience, which is something that they told us in that survey before, they know exactly where the loading bays are in the areas where they are delivering because they basically know their routes. I would say that there could be an issue with that they need to know how far they are from a particular location to go into the app and see what's available or not. I guess that the safety issue would come for those that are new to doing these particular routes, but I guess experience or they can actually pre-plan which one to request when they are building or creating the route at the beginning of the day. Different things. I mean, we haven't thought that far away, but ahead in the future. But I think one of the things that we wanted to incorporate as a future research is how we do this in an area. They say that they want to do, there are a certain number of loading zones in a particular area. How do we allow them to do it and then offer, if this one is not available, this is the second best, and then how that actually will be able to reduce the illegal parking in the particular zone.
Some question about like the methodology, I mean, to obtain these scenarios and all this data. Did you use simulation or you mentioned something about Markov chain? How
So there was a decision Markov process.
Okay.
And then you run the simulations with that, the parameters that go into it. And then the objective function is the maximization of the utilization.
Yeah, so I had a question about how do you restrict access to the parking spaces if I don't book it? So what about people who are not in the system, not using the booking system, but then they go there and they park there?
Yeah, that's what that I think was the question that Katarina made before, is that we are assuming that people are playing fair. If you properly label it, normally when you go to parking spots, now they are not necessarily having a meter. They have a sign, this is the app, go in the app and then pay, right? So we are assuming that there will be something like that, labeling that this is a zone, that this is a place. And whenever you go to the system, you will say like this loading zone is reserved, you cannot park here. Space is not available. Because it could be that is held within those 5 or 10 minutes that somebody reserved in advance. So technically, if you are an honest person, you will leave. That's what we are hoping. But at the very beginning, it will be about enforcement. Like only those that actually have the preservation or the ones that are in the pilot test or something like that are allowed to be there.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the deliveries, just yeah, you described it like they are searching for a space, it's really tight, you have to get your delivery off in time, and this is, for me, kind of conflicting to, okay, I will definitely play by the rules, if it says it's occupied for the next 10 minutes, but nobody is there, why shouldn't I use it?
I guess that's a matter of practice and education. Because the main, think about this is not delivery food, it's not prepared food, it's not like a DoorDash, it's like a big bay. So it's not like a regular parking spot. And I would think that for those people tend to be like, this is business, I should use it. If two drivers would like to be dishonest with each other, that's something else. But I think it would be a matter of education and enforcement. It has to be. Now, those are some of the enablers for this being successful, because alone, if you put a sign, I'm pretty sure many people will ignore it compared to the status quo.
Maybe on that, is it possible that maybe it's a dynamically price? And you have that time when it is open, say someone gets out before their allotted time is finished, and it does appear to be open, where then you start automatically charging someone who moves into that spot, but if you charge them enough in that small amount of time, because you know they need to leave, that could.
But how do you accommodate that in the system if it's already reserved for somebody else? So you cannot charge somebody if you are already charging somebody else. Because if you are implement the holding fee, for example, you are counting the person is paying 20 cents, 15 cents, whatever, until the point it gets there, plus the time that they are paying for the session that they reserved. So I don't know if the system could do it, that somebody show up and then the sensor activated, and then this person shouldn't be here. And this person, you need to take a photo of the license and then start charging and then send a ticket to their house. I don't know.
So that happened only then, is that not working out in the case where someone leaving that spot open before their 15-minute period?
Oh, that actually is accounted, so that they leave earlier. Yes, it resets the system that now it's actually empty. We can start receiving orders,
So you move
requests.
up, schedule gets moved up
Yeah.
in that way?
Yeah.
Okay, now I had a question that was similar to that, so I didn't understand that the schedule is up, I thought it was like. You block a time between this, and then if you are done early, then it sits open.
No,
But,
it actually updates, like
Yes,
if the person leaves early, I can update and then see because people start requesting all the time, right? So that's continuous. So if somebody leaves early and it opens up and I can accommodate another session before, then they can do it.
Is there an assumption that this increased utilization actually decreases congestion, or has there been a way to analyze if there's a reduction in congestion?
So when we included the delivery choice, the driver choices, we were able to see that it's a reduction between 2 to 5% of illegal parking. That means that they are going away from being in the middle of the road to the actual legal space. So we are assuming that reduces, but we are not counting the number of vehicles removed. We just count the time that they shifted from illegal parking to parking. Do you have another comment?
You mentioned earlier that service vehicle often occupies the delivery vehicle's parking spot, but I don't see you address that question.
Because normally they require longer parking sessions. So the minimum that they usually take is 1 hour, and in ours, that one is just 6% of all the all the requests.
Okay, so the service vehicle are allowed to be in a delivery vehicle spots, but they just take way longer time compared to the delivery vehicle.
Yes,
Well, are they also be on the same platform as the delivery vehicles are using? So we can say that this spot is gonna be occupied for more than an hour, so potentially we can reschedule a route there.
so for that one, we blocked it at 60 minutes. So we didn't allow anything more than 60 to avoid giving preference, because if we're thinking about revenue, it would give preference to the one that takes longer time. So we didn't want that. We just block it. I stop it at 60 minutes. If somebody wants to do it, they have to leave and then request it again.
Yes, yeah, thank you. This was very interesting. So maybe you said it, but did you have a dynamic pricing when it's high demands, high prices, or?
No, we didn't tested that. We just because we just identified that as the arrival rate increases,
Yeah.
we will be able to accommodate as many possible. We didn't want to play with charging more because
Okay.
in reality, they don't charge more when there is more demand. It's just, it's not available, it's not
Yeah,
available.
yeah, okay. And have you talked with the policymakers? What did I say?
No, we just
Will they
finished,
see
we're
this?
just finishing it.
Yeah, I think
So-
that would be very interesting to do.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to anybody yet.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, back on how you said the schedule is gonna shift, so if someone moves out earlier, the whole block is gonna move forward. Is there an understanding where that would or would not balance out with the understanding that some people might stay later than their period or cause some sort of delay for the next coming in? Would it equalize or sort of understanding about people tend to stay later or actually underestimate the time?
We haven't checked that. So we make sure that if somebody leaves early, we will be able to use it. We didn't do anything on the, what happens, it takes longer, because then you have to actually start charging for a new session. And then if you already accepted somebody else, that there might be a conflict, right? Because you are late, something like that. So something that we thought about is that, beyond the point of exactly, normally they overestimate, so they request for 30 minutes and maybe they use less. So normally they try to go longer when they request these times instead of, because that's what they are doing right now. They go for 60, but they stay less time. So that's what we assume, that if they request 15 minutes, they usually take less, or they request 30 or 60, they are usually taking less. But we didn't start it because it's gonna be harder to accommodate the late leavers with the early comers or the ones that are coming on time.
Right, and then if a company is having their employees deliver here and then deliver there, I'd be interested to see if you have people leaving late and then people leaving early, as you said, maybe it balances, because then it could affect the schedule and make it possible where their time moves up so far that they can't actually make their 15-minute time if they're really that strapped for time as they're delivering around the city.
Oh, you're talking about, I'm behind here, so I cannot make it to the next one?
Right, yeah, like you made your 15-minute reservation at 3 p.m. and you have a delivery earlier that day at 2:45 p.m. You wanna make it to that 3 p.m., but what if people are leaving so early that the block moves up where your spot is actually the 2:45 to 3?
No, we will
That's
hold
good.
it. That
It
case,
gets done.
either it will make it either infeasible or they will hold it. Because it's just 10 minutes, remember, it's up to 10 minutes. You cannot shift as much as to leave somebody stranded. Or it will not allow you to reserve so much in advance.
A question, or do you have any idea, what will be the impact of these policies on the consumer? At the end, they are the ones who are paying for this,
For what?
or all these, taxes or these.
Oh, no, but
fees.
this is just for the delivery companies.
I mean, the delivery company is charged for this, but.
Yeah, but they are already paying,
Alright,
so they
and-
don't necessarily transfer that to the customer purpose. What actually we found is that carriers save money by having a flexible structure compared to the fixed one right now. The only ones that are paying more are the ones that are that 6% that require more than the 60 minutes, more than 30 minutes. Because those are the ones that use more, and then they would need to account the savings on how much am I saving for not being on the travel lane and then having the risk of having a ticket. So yeah, so technically they should not be paying more, and that should not go directly to the consumers. I mean, that's something that the delivery company would do to the receiver, and that should be preset beforehand. They should not add that value.
All this is insignificant for consumer.
Exactly.
But you now have in your system that it's only available to book in like 10 minutes before. But you said on in another note that the routes the drivers take are already known. They have planned routes and they will know when it will be. Why isn't there any allocation? Like I can plan my day ahead and know maybe in
Because
this
that's
hour I
not-
will be in this time slot, and then
Uh-huh.
when I come to the time slot, I will allocate a 10-minute block in it. And I have multiple drivers that will request for this hour already. So I can schedule like this hour, but when the exact arrival time is, I can still shift. Because when
Because
you,
that is giving advantage to the ones that are doing that. So that's one of the main reasons why the public sector have not implemented reservations in advance for that purpose. Yes, definitely offering reservations help with the planning of the route for me as a private sector, but this is the public sector. So they need to ensure they're offering the same to everyone. And that's a public good, basically. So they cannot just say that, well, because if that's the case, then UPS and FedEx will have preference and nobody else will be able to deliver to those using those spots.
I have a question related with spatial analysis. Maybe you consider that, but could be nice like to see like, the implementation of an spatial analysis with this model, within this model. Like
what?
for example, considering the specific infrastructure available right now and modeling like one sector, one area to see.
Yeah, that's what
like,
we're
the
going to do
variability
next.
of-
The area and then the ones that are available and how we can actually say like, well, you cannot just only have one, this is the best available, but if this is not available, it's the second best. And then see if that actually induce them to actually go more for the parking versus the illegal parking.
Yeah,
Yes.
Now, this is a little far afield, but speaking of illegal parking, have you ever done any kind of modeling where you tried to figure out how much commercial parking would be needed on this reservation system to actually combat illegal parking to the point where it was no longer a public nuisance, like?
No, me no.
No,
And I don't know if there is,
Okay.
there is a study out there that to remove illegal parking
No, I estimated
okay.
demand and how much parking will be needed.
will be
Okay.
needed, yes. Yeah, that
to eliminate
yes.
that.
Okay,
But I only did it for New York.
okay.
And even with that, it was very hard to find
Okay.
space to accommodate what was needed.
Yeah, so New York, for example, in Manhattan, there are 41 zip codes.
Mhm.
It was 10 years ago. So let me remember something. So there are 41 zip codes in Manhattan. And I estimated the deficit I estimated the demand and the availability of parking in every 2-hour periods. And for the peak periods of the day in Manhattan, I found that about 30% of all the zip codes had a deficit in excess of 100%. Now, the zip codes are not homogeneous.
Yes.
For example, the Empire State Building has its own zip code. So the way I estimated was the linear distance, the curbside linear
Curbside, yes.
distance in the zip code. But when you're a building,
It's very small.
it's very small, and then the building has more than 100 establishments. So cases like that kind of skew some of the result because
Yes,
that one has way more demand to the amount of parking that is available.
yes. And also, I mean, in New York, they're never gonna go for that, you know, like the inconvenience of, you know, double parking, I don't think would be so much that people would give up for a single parking space, so. Maybe
Yeah.
when they build new places, I don't know.
But let's chat later, because now I have an idea.
Oh, okay.
So I think it was last year, the year before with Ivan, one of the students. We developed a simulation system based on data that estimates demand for parking for both light duty and heavy duty. And we did it for New York and LA. And I think it could be interesting to combine that because we have now the way to estimate demand throughout the day.
Okay,
And then we can see how that shifts.
yeah, that'll be interesting.
So I had a question. Did you have a simulation on without assuming any fixed slots, just free flow?
Continues, no. We found that Pittsburgh wanted to do something like this and they dropped it. We wanted to go first because we didn't have data on the demand for those. We had it for less than 15 and 29, 30 more than 30. So we wanted to use those initial time values in terms of sessions compared to just doing it by minute. I think we started with the minute. I don't remember what happened that we said like, let's better use the structure from this other research.
2 years ago, I did an analysis, not for parking, but another type of reservation system that was the pickups, container pickups at the ports. So the ports wanted to implement kind of a scheduling system. And based on kind of the data and the simulations, what we found was that as the variance of the time spent at the location increased, then the reservation system decreased the throughput.
Mhm.
Because now instead of allowing kind of a continuum of people coming in and out, then you're blocking a space. And then because there was a lot of variability, then the people that arrive late or stay a little bit longer
what he was mentioning.
then you lose time. There is a lot of time in which nobody was there because it was reserved.
Yeah.
They're kind of interesting.
Johanna?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering, if you had thought of other potential applications for like urban curb space usage for something like this, like moving something that came to mind of like, of course, a lot longer reservation of space, but I know that was always wild.
We
when I
wanted
went to Boston.
something that we wanted to also allow is like, how can we accommodate or how can we give priority to the delivery vehicles, but also accommodate the service vehicles at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that needs to be done when you're doing the area, because you need to make sure that, assuming there is less than 100%, if you need, that you can actually being able to give priority, but still being able to accommodate some. There is so much competition on this thing that this space is so precious and limited.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting fact, in Davis, downtown Davis, now that you know where downtown Davis is,
Yeah.
we used to have 20-minute kind of quick parking zones. Like green 20-minute zones. And a few years ago, I had students in the capstone class collect data on parking utilization in downtown Davis. And the average time of a vehicle park on those 20 minutes was like 45 minutes. Now
It's
we
20.
Now we don't have those zones because now we have a new policy in which you have to have so many feet of space without parking between the corner and with the first vehicle. So we replace all of those green zones to no parking. So for visibility and safety. So there is no way now to do any quick loading and unloading in downtown.
I didn't see trucks this morning.
There are not many. It's gonna be the Starbucks in front of the bagels.
Mhm.
Usually Starbucks there.
There was just a truck picking up uniforms at the hotel.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it
Sheets
have been hard to do freight research in Davis.
that happened to me in Iowa.
Oh.
When I was in Iowa is a state with no congestion. So imagine that. Imagine doing urban freight in Iowa with no congestion. So yeah, that happens too. But I didn't see, I'm impressed that the roads here are wide, are wider than the this in State College. And you have pretty nice bike path.
We're the capital of the world.
Oh, that's very good.
Many other people claim the same, but we're here among friends, so we can say it.
Okay. Anything else?
I guess, would you be able to take this data and make a model that wasn't matching a specific place like LA or New York, but let's say somebody was making some new exurban development and it was mixed use. Could you make a model that would be able to tell them how much parking space they needed using this reservation system?
I think you don't need a reservation system
Yeah,
for
well,
that, because if it is a
it's
new
not enough.
development, you just need the establishments and then the space available. And the buildings have the codes for specifying how many parking spaces they need according to the establishments.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then whether or not it works out is just like,
It depends, as time passes and the demand grows for establishment A or B, then they would
Okay.
need the generation models.
So in light of kind of the new development, so parking for light duty have been one of the tools to try to foster people to shift modes. So we went from requiring for land uses the minimum amount of parking spaces. Now in many cities, they are banning or putting a maximum on the number of parking spaces that a land use have to provide. And that have been a kind of an issue for the freight side, because the less amount of parking, either on-site or off-site, that is provided for regular passenger parking, then there is less availability for trucks to park.
okay, because I knew that was happening for people, but I didn't know if that was also for freight. 'Cause-
Well, it doesn't happen for freight. The less you have for people, the less space is available for any truck
For
to park.
anything else, yeah.
And then when you add up complete streets,
Yes,
or we want more biking infrastructure, then it's less and less parking for deliveries.
Yes, but we know that then they go and park in the bike lane when they don't have the space, so I can see that there's like a.
Yeah, but
conflict.
among everything that the company can fight for the parking tickets, they cannot fight
that.
bike lane infractions, so they avoid it. And that's why they prefer to park
On the travel lane.
on the travel lane, and then when they open the door,
They hit the bikers.
they hit the biker. But they were not in the bike lane.
Yeah.
I see, I just wish there was a better way to do that.
Do you have an estimation around how much it will cost to a city to implement this type of thing? I mean, do they need any specific
No,
technology, sensor or something like this?
I mean, just a sensor on the app.
Yeah.
That's the most expensive part. And actually, one of the things, there were different things. Some are testing sensors embedded in the concrete, but they said that it's not as good. Others are testing with cameras on the fixed infrastructure facing to see that they are actually making sure that it actually tells the app that it's empty or is occupied. But there are different options
Depending on the area.
Yeah. on how fancy they want to go.
How much money
They want to invest in that.
Much money potential there is to
To
for
get the money
revenue.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they want to go on the 107%, not on the 90%.
So when we were in New York, working on a large project, that was the off-hour delivery project, trying to switch deliveries to the off hours. One of the benefits for the company was that they were gonna be receiving less parking tickets. But New York was getting about 100 million per year on parking tickets. And so it was a big amount of money. So when we were showing kind of these benefits to the city, said, wait, then we are not gonna get that amount of revenue from the parking ticket. And then they started to put some problems.
Yeah,
Prefer.
it's about.
We want to
It's a
do to the
social
bicyclists.
benefit
Oh,
of
I know.
implementing it, you're using and paying more. It's a saving for the carriers, but there is a need to actually close the gap because otherwise they are not gonna go for it. So yeah, it's nice, it's beautiful, you're making it use better in a better way, but where's my money?
There's my money. And then they had time of day park, kind of dynamic, well, it's not dynamics, but time of day,
Time of
bridge tolls and tunnel tolls, and because we were switching it more traffic to the off hour where it was cheaper, they were getting less revenue.
Less revenue from the tolls too.
So not
It
all
was not a win.
stakeholders have the same objective.
Yeah, it was not a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Perverse incentives.
Yeah. Yeah, so parking is a big issue.
It's a big issue. Pushing the bird, the boundary, one little inch at a time.
Any more questions? Dr. Amaya is an expert in many fields, so you can ask her different type of question beyond the presentation. She will be happy to answer. If not, we'll make it up. Well, if you don't have,
Are they all in single?
no. So here in Davis, we have basically 3 related firms, and we also have people from other backgrounds, but the most is civil. Then at ITS, we have the TTP, or Transportation Technology and Policy. That is a multidisciplinary graduate program. And then we have kind of a sister, that is or brother, that is the EGG, or the Energy Graduate Group. How many of you are from EGG?
No, but,
No one? Okay. Sometimes we have EGG people.
okay, so let me ask, now I'm gonna ask questions. Okay, so now I have my captive demand here. So how many of you shop online? Okay, how many order between 1 and 5 per month? How many order between 6 and 10 per month? Okay, so is he inside or outside? Okay, so, okay, it happens that I also, as I mentioned, I do work also in things that are related to last mile deliveries, but also e-commerce, that is delivery choices. So when you decide to order online, where do you receive your deliveries? at home. You're a student, so you don't receive it at work. 2, do you receive it at the delivery locker? My goodness. But you have received it at the, so you can raise your hand. And what about pickup at a store? Okay, and now my next question, have you thought about being willing to pay a little bit more for receiving it at home, but using a low emissions vehicle? Would you be willing to pay $1 for receiving a delivery at home, but using a low emissions vehicle that saves emissions? Raise your hand. You start going down. Okay, now, would you be willing to shift to pickup instead of getting it at home if they are able to save more emissions and it does not cost you anymore? Okay, you want to keep receiving it at home. You don't want to pick it up. You don't want to save. You don't want to pay more. What do you want? Huh?
I drove to my house.
So it happens that, as we have seen here, that people value convenience more than the environment. We don't care about the environment. Even though people say like, yes, let's save the planet, that's not happening. So when we order online and those deliveries are made by traditional diesel-powered vehicles, they are emitting about 300 grams of CO2 emissions per delivery. If we use low-emission vehicles, we can actually save a little bit of that, maybe up to 30% if they go home. But if they go to places where they can drop more deliveries at once, a store or a delivery locker, for example, they can save more. The problem is that people are not necessarily willing to give up their receiving at home against pickup and then being able to save some emissions. The other aspect is that it seems that you are not part of that sample. We found that they want to keep receiving it at home, but they are willing to pay that additional $1 that I told you, and then being able to still receive it at home, but using a low emissions vehicle and still save some of those emissions. The other element is, let's say that
Population is biased because most of us are
students, that's
Yes.
true. Yeah, we also found that younger generation also are less willing to pay. That's true. No, but in terms of age, actually, and professions, like students tend to be less, more cost conscious and less environmentally conscious. So this is a very good sign. Now, the other thing is, as you order online, it happens that there are some states that are trying to impose a delivery fee for every order that you place that has a product that pays sales tax. So they say that you order 1 to 5 orders per month, just the majority here. If they start imposing a delivery fee for every order you place, will you continue placing the same number of orders? How many? What happened? You say that you order between 1 to 5 orders per month. And I'm telling you, you're gonna get charged a delivery fee for every order that you place. Would you?
So the alternative is I will bunch it all together and make one delivery, one larger one?
So
or is it-
the options is I will continue doing the same, or I will order less number of times, as you said, I will
Okay, I
consolidate.
will put it all together in one order.
Okay,
Sure.
how many will continue ordering the same way? The same 1 to 5 orders per month? How many?
What's the subset that you pay Prime and so you don't care for delivery fee?
Oh, there is no free delivery in this world.
I think that's my thing, if I'm paying for delivery, and then I'm also paying for however I get to the store, why not just get to the store and pick my stuff out, like?
You can,
At that
and they will
point,
not
it
charge you the
stops.
fee. If you pay
Yeah, it
to
just
go,
doesn't make sense, it's like, then I would just shop at a store, because I don't wanna pay delivery twice.
no, it's not twice, but
Well, but like,
you are paying
I'm
two
paying
different
my
things.
gas to get somewhere and I'm paying the same delivery fees that
Sure. Okay, so how many will consolidate into less orders to avoid the delivery fee? That's my people. I wish you would do it. So that's what I'm analyzing right now, is basically what would be the behavior people will follow once this delivery fee actually is in place. 2 states are already doing it, 2 more are announcing it, and as of now, the very lowest started at 25 cents. Right now, the highest is going up to $1 per order. And we're trying to identify what the behavioral change will be if this is implemented. So, yes.
I'm trying to go back to the convenience versus environment thing a little bit. I've got a question about that because I think like if we consider like Amazon they have a lower emission option on checkouts. But when you pick that, there's kind of an opaque thing going on because you don't know what they're actually doing and if they're actually accomplishing that. Is there kind of a mismatch in that aspect? Because if you say like young people or people these days don't care about the environment versus convenience, well, if there's a kind of an opaque thing between how a company is actually doing the environmental aspect versus what we think is actually happening, would there be a reduction in that?
Yeah, so the problem with that is the lack of trust and transparency. They just put a green leaf next to it and they tell you, there are some that actually tells you how many emissions you're saving for a fact. There are others that you put the green leaf and say like this, with this you will be able to save the environment or something like that. More vague. I would say that definitely displaying at least the type of vehicle, if it is something that is low emissions and you can see or translate into less emissions or more emissions. United, for example, whenever you want to buy a ticket, they show you how many emissions you're generating for that particular flight that you are actually booking in the different times of the day or whatever itinerary you're selecting. So it's actually there. There is a problem. Sometimes you don't understand, we in general, the population don't understand what is the meaning of saving 300 grams of CO2. But we can understand it's taken in an electric truck or in a delivery bike. So if that one is more representative of the reality, because we are able to form an idea of that. So I would say there is a need to display more information in an understandable way for the customer, besides just showing the green leaf. I would say that that's a valid point. But even though you give information, we did a test, a study. Again, the sample that we collected, the main driver for selecting a delivery choice was not related to sustainability, it was related to convenience. So people want less than 24 hours at home. And if you offer a low emissions vehicle, they may shift for it, but receiving it at home. They don't want to go outside to pick up. So there is a need for not just to make people do things differently, that could actually help in terms of the consolidation or in terms of the savings in all the operations.
What if the low emissions option is the default? And then
That's one of our recommendations. Do not offer the one with the standard things, because definitely is the most harmful right now. Thank you. Yes.
There's 2 questions online.
Oh boy.
If delivered to a pickup location, what's the environmental impact of the trip and from the pickup location? Also, what is the cost of the trip and from the pickup location?
What's the first one?
If delivered to a pickup location, what is the environmental impact of the trip from the pickup location? To and from the pickup location.
Oh, for as the customer?
Yes.
So from the perspective of the carrier, the company making the deliveries, they are going to travel less miles and they're going to be able to drop more deliveries at a single stop. So the drop density increases when they are going to a store or the delivery locker compared to every single house. So they are significant savings in vehicle miles travel and emissions generated by going from 20 stops to 3, for example. Then on the end of those that pick up the orders, that is us as customers, the best option would be that we could go walking. If we drive, we are generating emissions, yet we are generating less emissions than a truck. The problem is if you also start creating single trips just for you to pick up and then come back. That is definitely not good for the environment either. So and we were talking about this before the seminar. It would be interesting to actually study that, like what would be the best way to save emissions if we are actually allowing for pickups, but considering the means that us as customers use to do that pickup. Because going for more pickup trips does not necessarily help if you are driving a highly polluting vehicle, for example. So what's the other one?
How does allowing more time before receiving the delivery enable more efficient and less polluting delivery routes?
So it is more efficient because it generates consolidation. From the perspective of the company that is delivering, so the carrier or the shipper, they can actually wait for more orders to be combined and be delivered in a single vehicle or single route, compared to using half a vehicle and then do small routes every single day, for example. So it's not that good that we can know the UPS driver by first name. That's definitely not good.
Any more questions? Any final pressing question?
Yeah, just maybe about the location of these pickup locations for the parcels. Is there any study on what locations are best? I mean, I've seen it, you can put it next to a grocery store, I don't know, then you would go there for your trip, pick it up, and you're there either way. But there's also some just put next to a train station or whatever.
Mhm.
What's the use of them? Because if I walk to the train station to go to work or whatever, and then I come back, maybe I don't want to carry my packet, my parcel with me all the way back home.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is there studies on how they are utilized at different locations?
So in the US, that definitely has not been done because there is not enough density of pickup points in the US. In Europe, this has been more
Okay.
adopted and more studied. Now, the issue is that even though you go to pick up your parcels, there is enough density that you don't have to, even if it is a bigger package, you don't have to carry a huge box 20 blocks. So there is significantly more availability that even though you may need to do a short trip, it's not as a burden for you as a customer. They still have those options that they deliver big packages to your houses, but the customers pay a little bit more for that. All the other ones that can be carried, there is enough density in the areas, in the cities, that people who have very short trips to those. So they are willing to pick up, well, one, they are willing to walk more, but two, they also have more availability. Here in the US, it's privatized, so there is not much as access to those points. That's one of the main difference.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.